Alright, we're going to block. This is a plastic bowl that we've had in my family forever. A family friend made it years ago. So, I mean, many of you know my sister Tiffany, Mojave knitter on Plurk. Anyway, so this was a family popcorn bowl somebody made, but it works great for soaking most stuff. I then have soak. This happens to be the citrus kind because, well, that's what I have handy sitting here next to the sink. So I just put a little bit, not a whole lot, especially for a shawl that is this small. And now we're going to run some cool water. Don't do real hot water. We're not trying to agitate this. Sometimes I'll put a little bit of warm, just so that it's not freezing cold when I put my own hands in it. And as we saw, this shawl is really, really tiny, so we don't need it real full. But here's our shawl. I'm going to put that in there. We want to make sure it's totally covered, because we really want this to soak and be sopping wet. I usually squeeze it just a little, get the air out, make sure it's sinking, because some things you try and block will actually try and float on top. And then that should be plenty of water. And now we'll just let this sit for 20 minutes. So I'm going to set a timer, and then we'll move on to the next step. Alright, so it's been 20 minutes. And now if you look, this water is really blue. That means that we have some dye running out. Now this happens a lot with hand dyes. It's not anything bad to do with the yarn or the dyeing process. It just happens. At this point, though, I usually want to make sure that the water comes out clear. So I dump this. Oops, I hit stop accidentally while I was moving around. Alright, so we want to really get this blue out. So I'm actually gently squeezing. We still got blue. If it keeps doing this, we can also set it with some vinegar. I actually have never needed to do that. But see, it's not quite so blue now. You want to be really gentle when you're squeezing, though. We do not want it to felt. And I don't know if you remember, but I don't know exactly what kind of fiber this is. So I don't even know if it's a superwash or not, so we're going to be extra gentle. So, alright. I don't, it looks clearer in person than it does on the video. Alright, I'm going to let this soak for about another 5 minutes. And then we'll go on to the next step, because it's pretty close now. Alright, so this water still has a little blue in it, but it's much clearer, so I'm not going to worry too much about it anymore. I'm going to dump that. And I usually just kind of squeeze against the side. Trying to get the rest of the water out of it. Some items I will actually roll up in a towel and squeeze the water, but this is pretty small. I'm not going to worry too much. So, we're now going to take this to the blocking area. Alright, so this is my blocking area. We're actually on my bed, but these are blocking mats. The ones I have are 2 feet by 2 feet. They are from a company called Get Rung. They're actually floor mats. I will link to where I got those. And the other things I have are blocking wires and T-pins. Now, when you get T-pins or any kind of pin, you want to make sure they're stainless steel because you don't want to have rust on your fabric. And it doesn't matter quite so much for a dark color like this, but if you're doing a white, you'll really want to make sure that you're not getting rust, because you don't want to discolor something you work so hard on. So, when we're blocking, some things to look for. This shawl has a very nice line right here at the top that we can use for the blocking wires. And it also has another one down here in the center where we can thread the blocking wires through. So that is where we are going to start. So I'm actually going to well, we'll see how well this works. So I generally find a nice spot where it's straight, especially where there's eyelets, and go in and out of the eyelets. That's usually my starting point. And a lot of lace has something like this, so kind of use whatever your pattern is and see if there's something that really marks where a straight line should be. Alright, you see how I've been going in and out of those eyelets? I'm going to pause this and I'm going to keep going because it's really hard to do this one-handed. So, alright, I have this woven in through all of the eyelets, and then I just kind of use my fingers to flatten it out. There's way more perfect ways to do this. Now if you look, there's actually 2 wires. That's because one wire isn't really long enough. So I've got one wire through one half, one through the other, with a little bit of overlap from here to here. And I always make sure I overlap because one of the things you're going to be doing is pulling this tight. So like I put a pin there, and now we're going to be stretching this because we're going to block this pretty aggressively. Alright, now we're going to stick another pin down here. Alright, so the next set of next wires I'm going to do are going to be right down the center. Since there's this nice eyelet, I'm going to do the same thing as before and just use the eyelet for the wire. So, I'm going to do that, and then I'll be right back. Alright, I have put the other wires down the middle. And now one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a couple pins right here because I want to keep that top relatively straight because we've already got it fairly lined up. Now, please remember that I am totally doing this as I go, so I've never tried to block and think and hold a camera at the same time. So now, just like before, I'm going to tug. So I'm actually tugging here and here. Well, I keep my wires, and I'm gonna put a couple pins here, and then I'm gonna try and figure out a nice way to do these. I suspect I will still be blocking this more aggressively, but you can see that the pattern is already really opening up. And something to keep in mind, you can't really mess this up, because the most you're going to be doing is, if you totally somehow make the lace look awful, which is, you just re-soak it and start all over again. So, you know, you already did the hard part. You already did the knitting. So this part's supposed to be kind of this is the beautifying step. So I'm going to pause this again, and I'm going to make a plan for the points. I think I'm going to thread a wire through the points and see how that looks. Alright. Alright, so I put the wire through all the points, all the way up through the end. Now some of these aren't quite right because this is just sitting here right now. We haven't pinned anything. I'm just showing you. And I did adjust these pins as I was working. Remember, everything you do, you can unpin, you can reblock. This is very damp, so it's totally movable right now. So, all the way up through there. So now, the wires allow you to pull this even tighter. You know, see, we can really yank on this now. And we can really yank up here. Now the most important line for me is I always want to make sure that this line stays relatively straight. It's not going to be perfect, and I have no desire to make it perfect. You know, I could sit here and spend a lot of time futzing with it, but as long as it's mostly straight, I'm happy. So I'm actually going to pin this line next, because that will kind of hold that in place while we do the rest of the tugging. So, and I just kind of space out the pins. I usually do one approximately in the middle, and then I usually go in the middle of the next two. And I'm only working on half right now. And then I do middle of the next ones. And I've got a whole bunch of these. I don't remember where I got this set, but I really like the cases because they're pretty solid for when I'm not using them. So we'll keep pinning. I really love you guys because this is really kind of a pain to do one-handed. Okay, so I place our first one halfway here, and as we've been tugging, my overlap has gotten really small now, so I'm actually gonna rethread that through a little bit. Makes me feel better. Alright. Again, halfway point. Halfway point. And mainly this is, you're primarily here keeping the blocking wire from moving. I'm not actually pinning into the yarn. I'm pinning to hold the blocking wire in place. Alright, so our top, relatively straight. I'm happy with it. And now we're going to start pulling this out and pinning. I'm taking a pin here, and I'm actually using that to help pull and stopping it. You see there's a curve there? That's fine. Blocking wires are made to be flexible. So we'll pull here. And now well, let's see. I'm going to come over here. And this section is already pretty straight, so we're just going to go with it. And I'm going to put another pin here to hold the blocking wire. Now, I do have to take this out, because if you look, there's this weird curve right here. We don't want that. But it's because the pins are in, because the pins we put in before are holding it that way. So, I'm now going to put another pin here to straighten that out. And you don't have to block this aggressively. You could have made this a softer sweep, but because I really want to open up this lace, I'm pulling. So, and I'm going to do the same thing on this side. So, here I go. It's about halfway. I'm just pulling and placing the pin there to hold it. Sorry this is jittery. Here's the completed shawl. Turn this sideways. And now we just need to wait for it to dry. Alright, so this is dry. It's dry all over, even the edges. I do have to admit that in order for it to dry faster, I did cheat. So, but actually one of the things I did was, because I actually left mine pretty wet when I first started blocking, I came in here and blotted it with a towel and then some paper towel and got a lot of the moisture out. Used the hair dryer on it and let it air dry. And it's actually been about 3 hours since you saw it last, so between the blotting and the hair dryer and general air drying, it's dry now. So we will start removing pins. I actually like removing the bars first, because I can go shoo, and there they go. Alright. Alright. Oh, sorry. Now we'll start taking the pins out. Some of these pins aren't even in here, but the points are still very distinguished because that's the way we dried it. So, really picking the pins up is more of a safety thing at this point. While I'm doing this, I'm only watching the camera, not my actual hands, which is why I'm kind of feeling things funny. So, here's the completed shawl. Oop, we got something still stuck somewhere. Oh yeah, I stuck some in the middle to keep the bars straight. Alright. It's got beautiful drape to it. And it's just gorgeous. So, I am going to be putting this all together into one film, I hope. And I hope you enjoyed this segment. Thanks to everyone. Bye.